With the invention of the internet, most people's lives have changed. It got to the point where almost everyone I knew wanted a computer. A couple of years ago, we finally joined the computer generation and decided to buy a computer. At first, it was just a new toy in the house. My wife Deb used it for email and games. My children Kyle and Kayla used it for games and homework. I used it to search for information on the internet and watch movies. I was often late for work. I worked the second shift and left the factory at midnight. I didn't want to go to bars like a lot of guys. After all, I was married. So I always went home. Everyone was asleep and I sat down at the computer. After a while, the same thing became boring. I didn't become addicted like many people. I visited historical websites and read stories about everything imaginable. I couldn't believe most of what I read. Did people really do that, or was it just fantasy? I was hooked on stories about cheating wives and all these women cheating on their husbands. It was hard to believe, but it made me think. And now I was kind of watching my wife's behavior. When we went on dates, I would tell her she was dancing too close or being too nice to other men. We even argued about it. I knew she was a beautiful woman, but I had no reason not to trust her. I rummaged through the laundry basket and looked through our emails. It's so stupid that it comes to mind after reading stories like that. I started reading less and less, but many thoughts still lingered. I remember reading about men who caught their wives with other men and stood there watching them. I asked myself, does it really turn you on to catch your spouse with another man? I kept thinking about it, and given how jealous I was, it didn't seem like it could turn me on. I told Deb about these thoughts, and she asked me why I was even thinking about it. She didn't want anyone but me. I met Deb when we were in our early 20s. It was at her sister's wedding. We danced and became good friends. She told me she was a school teacher, and I told her what factory I worked at. We started dating and got married about a year later. The next year we had Kyle, and 2 years after that we had Kayla. Deb's sister, Sandy, was a wild girl I met years ago in school. We didn't date, but she was a real slut. I probably shouldn't say that, or people will think I'm a slut too. I was pretty wild back then. She slept with pretty much everyone. As far as I know, almost all the guys on our soccer team were with her. I participated in sex orgies after games in which she participated. No one forced her, and she did it more than once. She and one of her friends, Anne, slept with practically everyone on demand. I knew her husband, Bob, from work. He was one of the day shift supervisors. Then he was transferred to another factory. He was just as promiscuous as Sandy. He was the one who invited me to their wedding. I didn't like Bob very much because I knew what kind of person he was. I liked him even less when I thought he was trying to hit on Deb after our wedding. She told me she thought he was just being polite because he was our brother-in-law, but I knew better. I told her that if he tried anything with her to let me know and I'd beat his ass. She told me to calm down, that she was mine. We agreed never to talk about our past relationships because we were both pretty jealous people. I didn't want to go on a date one day and run into a guy she said she slept with. I also didn't want to have to explain to her that I slept with her sister. When Kyle was 8 and Kayla was 6, they were both in school, and Deb and I got along pretty well, except for the arguments we all had. We didn't see each other much because we worked different shifts. I was alone during the day, and she stayed with the kids at night. It wasn't the best situation for a marriage, but that's how it was. One day, as I was getting ready for work, Deb asked me to stop by her sister Sandy's house and fix the plumbing. Her kitchen sink was leaking and Bob was useless as a handyman. I laughed when she said plumbing, and she quickly replied, "The plumbing in the sink, not my sister. If you try to fix it, you'll regret it." I told Deb I'd stop by on my way to work and fix the sink before going into the house. She kissed me and left with the kids for school. I couldn't stop thinking about Sandy. From what Bob had told me, I figured they were probably swingers. They didn't have children because Sandy always said it would ruin her figure. Her figure wasn't bad, but it wasn't better than Deb's, and Deb had 2 children. Sandy always tried to flirt with me. I tried to just joke around with her. She didn't seem like a bad person, but it wasn't worth destroying my marriage over her. I remember her telling me that it would happen someday. Sandy worked part-time as a cashier at a local grocery store. She had the day off and knew I was coming over to fix the plumbing. When I arrived, she was wearing a sexy robe. She offered me a cup of coffee, and we chatted for a few minutes before she showed me the sink. I realized she had just clogged it when I pulled everything out from under the sink to disconnect the trap. Her husband could probably have fixed it. He probably hadn't even tried. I was lying on my back with my head under the cabinet, putting the trap back in place. She had thrown too many eggshells and potato peels down the garbage disposal, and they had clogged the drain. As I was putting everything back together, she stood up and leaned against me. "What are you doing, Sandy?" "I want you." "Stop it, Sandy. I'm trying to finish my work." She stepped back for a moment, and I finished putting the pipes back together. When I was done and stood up, Sandy asked, "Are you going to sleep with me now?" "No, Sandy, I can't do that. Deb is your sister, and I love her. I won't cheat on her, especially not with her sister." "Have you forgotten how it was in school? Are you too good to sleep with me now?" "Sandy, please. I love Deb. She doesn't know about our past unless you tell her. You're a beautiful woman, but I love Deb." "You're a stupid, stupid man. Either you sleep with me, or I'll tell Deb what you did. She'll believe me, after all, I'm her sister." "Why did you do this? Why did you hurt us like this? Deb is your sister, she loves you." Sandy laughed. "My little prude thinks she's a slut. Let's see how she reacts when I tell her about this." "Sandy, don't do that. I won't sleep with you, and I'll tell Deb about what happened at school. I know she'll understand." I grabbed my tools and told her I was done with her damn sink. I jumped in my car and drove to work. My head was spinning. Would Sandy make up a story and lie to Deb? When I got to work, I called Deb, but she wasn't home yet. I left a message. "Deb, I love you, and I want to tell you something about your sister when I get home tonight." I started working. It was hard to concentrate with all these thoughts running through my head. It was a normal day, just like any other, but now everything was mixed up. Around 6 o'clock, I called home again, but no one answered. I called Deb's mom and asked if she knew where Deb was. She left with Sandy and Bob. "The kids are staying with me. Deb asked me to watch them for a few hours while they're away. I said I'd have them over for the night. I like having them here." "Is something wrong, Ray?" "No, everything's fine. If you see her, tell her I love her and I'll see her tonight. I have to get back to work." That was one of the longest nights of my life. I knew I had to tell Deb about her and her sister. Hell, that was before I even met Deb. I'm sure she would have understood. Finally, my day was over and I headed home. As I pulled up in front of the house, I saw a car parked in the driveway. I knew right away it was Sandy's car. It looked like it was time to face the music. I walked over to open the door, but it was locked. I took out my key and couldn't believe my eyes. My wife, Bob, and Sandy were sitting in the living room. Sandy was sitting on my couch holding Deb's hand. Bob was pulling up his pants, and my beautiful wife was lying on the couch. Everyone jumped when I opened the door. Sandy had a smile on her face, and Bob had a smirk. My wife, Debbie, looked half scared, half drunk. Now I had to face the truth. I don't know about the guys in the stories I've read, but I didn't have an erection. I didn't like seeing my wife in that position. I was beside myself with rage, ran up to Bob, and hit him with all my strength. I knocked him to his feet. I heard screaming behind me. I didn't know who was screaming, Deb or Sandy. I hit Bob maybe 5 times before I felt a blow to the back of my head. When I came to, I was in the hospital. Looking around, I saw a man in uniform. He must have been a city police officer. "I see you're back in the world. I'm Patrolman Gene Andrews." "Where am I and where's my wife? What happened to me?" "Slow down, Mr. Harper. You have a concussion from being hit on the head with a glass vase. Apparently, there was a fight at your home and the police were called. You were going to be charged with assault, but the charges were dropped. You're very lucky. You could have gone to jail for a year and a half. What about the assault on me? You said someone hit me on the head. According to witnesses, you came home and started fighting with your brother-in-law. To stop you, his wife hit you on the head with a vase. You were hit only once, and it was done to stop the fight. You should thank them for dropping the charges against you. Where was my wife when you came in? When we entered, your wife was vomiting. Your sister-in-law said that she had drunk too much, and you became angry with her. When you approached her, your brother-in-law stopped you, and you started fighting with him. He was just trying to defend himself. When we spoke to your wife, she said that she could hardly remember anything, except that you were shouting at her. If the charges have been dropped, why are you here? My boss called when you weren't home and told me to wait and get your statement? So what happened? I have nothing to say. I wasn't going to tell the whole world that I caught my wife in bed with another man. I just lay there and said nothing. All right, as you wish. According to the doctor, you'll have to stay here until tomorrow. I suggest you think about what you've done and thank God that charges weren't pressed. You're very lucky, Mr. Harper. The officer left, and I lay there with a terrible headache. What was I going to do? I knew I couldn't live with the cheater, but I had to find out why she did it. I called my sister and asked her to pick me up the next morning. I had no way of getting home and I didn't want Debbie to pick me up. While I was waiting for my sister Amy to arrive, the phone rang. It was Deb. "Do you want me to pick you up? We need to talk. We're even now." Even? What the hell are you talking about? You slept with Bob, and now you're saying we're even. Amy is coming to pick me up. I'm just going to grab a few things and leave. What do you mean, leave? I just want to get back at you for what you did, Deb replied. I'm not going to discuss this on the phone. Amy and I will come pick up my things and then we'll talk. I hung up and waited for Amy. She showed up a few minutes later and we drove to my place. I asked Amy to wait in the car. I knew Deb liked her, and I didn't want her to get caught up in the middle of things. I knocked on the door, and Deb opened it. I asked where the kids were, and she said they were still at her mother's. I spoke first. "Did you get my message?" "Yes, and Sandy told me how you made her have sex with you." "How could you do that?" she cried softly. "I didn't do anything like that. That's why I left the message. I went to Sandy's and fixed her plumbing. She started hitting on me. I told her no, but she kept insisting. She said she would tell you that we had sex, even though it's not true." "I don't believe you. You're lying." "Why would my sister lie to me?" "She's jealous of our marriage. She wanted to break us up and it looks like she succeeded. Why do you think she sat there and let Bob do that to you? They're swingers and wanted to get you involved. Looks like they both got what they wanted. You let Bob do that to you and our marriage fell apart." "No, that's not true. I did it to get back at you. You slept with my sister, and I slept with Bob to get back at you. Sandy even knew you weren't circumcised and that you had a mole on your thigh. Your sister is a slut. She knew about it because I slept with her in high school, just like all the other guys. I never told you because I loved you and didn't want to lose you. Then you said we would never talk about our past relationships, so I let it go. I don't know what to believe. Sandy is my sister, and I'm your husband. You didn't even wait to ask me or call me. Instead, you let Bob do it. Do you really think it would have solved the problem if I had raped your sister? You must have wanted it badly if you let them talk you into it." "But," Sandy said, "I don't care what your slutty sister said. This isn't just about Bob. This is about you not respecting me or trusting me enough to even listen to the accusations against you. If I raped her, why didn't she call the police? She said she didn't want to hurt me with a family scandal. And last night she hit me over the head without any problem and called the police. She didn't scream rapist because it didn't happen. You can believe whoever you want, but our marriage is over. Why would you want to live with a rapist? No, you wanted Bob and used me as an excuse. No, that's not true. I love you. You'd better look up the word love in the dictionary. It doesn't include sex with other men. I'm going to take some of my things and come back next week for the rest while you're away. On Monday, the first thing I'll do is go to a lawyer and start filing for divorce." "Ray, wait. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Sandy said she forgave you, and you would forgive me. I just wanted to get back at you." "No, you just slept with Bob and your sister." I went to get my suitcase and packed a few personal items. What am I going to tell the kids? Tell them whatever you want. I don't care. I don't want to see you anymore. I'll find a lawyer to arrange visitation so Amy can take the kids and I can see them. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I opened the door and left. Amy drove me to a cheap motel until I could find a place to stay. On the way to the motel, I told Amy the whole story. She was my sister and my best friend. She knew I was telling the truth. I knew she would help look after Deb and the kids. Weeks passed, and it was very difficult for me. I worked overtime because I had more expenses. I found a cheap hotel that I rented by the week. I ate mostly at a bar or a corner cafe. I met with a lawyer and, since I had no proof, simply asked to annul our marriage. He told me that Debbie didn't want that but would agree to whatever I wanted. Everything was split down the middle. We moved out of the house and she took on all the expenses. Our savings were split in half and she had to give me half the value of our belongings. I had to pay child support, but that didn't bother me at all. I love my children and miss them very much. The problem was that I missed Debbie too, but I knew it was over between us. I went to all the school events I could without interfering with work. Both of our children had birthdays, and I only went to theirs so I wouldn't have to see Debbie's family. I was polite to Debbie, but whenever she wanted to talk about us, I left. I saw the children every weekend and sometimes during the week, depending on my work schedule. Deb probably called me almost every day before the divorce. If she wanted to talk about the kids or household matters, I listened. When she wanted to talk about us, I hung up. One time I stopped by my sister's for dinner and played with the kids. Amy told me that Sandy was still sticking to her story that I had forced her to have sex. She said Deb was torn between what Sandy was saying and what I was saying. I tried to explain to Amy that I had no proof, just like Sandy. It was just my word against hers, and Debbie believed her. That was the most painful part. One afternoon when I was home, the phone rang. It was the school. They told me Kyle wasn't feeling well and asked if I could pick him up. Of course, I agreed and drove over to get him. He had a cold and was coughing. Debbie was teaching at the high school, so I called her to tell her I was bringing Kyle home. She said she would come home as soon as she could. I took Kyle home, put him to bed, and took his temperature. He had a slight fever, but nothing serious. About an hour later, Deb came home with Kyle. She quickly went in to check on Kyle. As she walked in, the phone rang. Without thinking, I picked up the phone out of habit. It was Sandy. "What are you doing there?" she asked. "Well, it's not surprising, you liar. Kyle got sick and I brought him home. Don't worry, you ruined our marriage." I leaned over and pressed the record button on the answering machine. It was an answering machine that recorded both sides of the conversation. "Is he okay? What do you care? You broke up his parents. What do you care about him?" "Listen, Ray, things got out of hand. You knew we were swingers, and Bob wanted to try my little sister. If you had slept with me like I asked, nothing would have gotten out of hand. But no, you came home and started arguing. You told Deb that I raped you, and then you made Bob rape Deb. What kind of sister are you? Bob didn't rape her. She gave herself to him willingly. Hell, she probably would have done it again if Bob had tried. She was drunk, and you talked her into all that nonsense. And then you stood there and watched your husband rape her. The problem, Ray, is that you can't prove it. I told you from the beginning that she would believe me and not you. And now you know that. If you want sex, call me. Tell Deb to call me later. I hope my nephew is feeling better." She hung up and I turned off the recorder. Debbie asked who that was, and I said, "Your wonderful angel, the sister who would never lie to you." What did she want? I recorded her message and she asked me to call her back. Well, see you in court on Thursday. I guess today can be called a day of freedom. Don't forget to listen to the message, I said, as I headed for my car. About 5 minutes later, my cell phone rang again. It rang about 10 times while I was driving home. When I got home, the phone was still ringing. Finally, I answered it. "Ray, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I just spoke with Sandy and she told me the truth about what happened. She was not assaulted." "I'm glad to hear that, but it doesn't change anything. You slept with Bob and didn't even give me a chance to explain. After I told you the truth, you still believed your sister, thinking I was a rapist. I want to tell you one thing. I loved you and probably always will, but I also hate you for what you did to our family and for not trusting me." On Thursday, I took 2 days off work. I went to my lawyer's office and signed the divorce papers. I wanted to leave before Deb got home. I was in a very depressed state as I headed to the bar next door. I had already ordered my drinks when I looked over and saw Bob walk in. He didn't notice me as I walked up to him and punched him in the face. When he fell, I hit him again and again. I got up and started kicking him until he was a pile on the floor. I bent down to hit him again when 3 guys pulled me away from him. I remember saying, "I hope you burn in hell," and continuing to kick him until they pulled me away. The police threw me on the floor, handcuffed me, and took me to a patrol car. This time, they took me to jail. They let me make a phone call, and I called my sister Amy. I told her what I had done and that she didn't need to pay my bail. It would be too expensive, and I was going to serve my time. When I hung up, she cried. Debbie came to the jail to see me, but I refused to see her. It was almost 2 months before my case went to court. I was charged with assault, and I pleaded guilty. I was sentenced to 2 years minus the time I had already served. I asked Amy to pick up my things and keep them in her basement. She told me that Debbie was in a bad way and wanted to see me. I told her I didn't want to see her. I know you don't want to hear this, but Debbie loves you very much. Her family is furious about what Sandy said about you, and there's something else you should know. Debbie never showed up to sign the divorce papers, so you're going to prison a married man. I was in prison, and it's not a place you want to live. It was a different world. I was constantly fighting. I had to prove my strength to almost every group. I wasn't anyone's scapegoat. My cellmate was a lifer nicknamed Killer. I think he came home one day, found his wife with another man, and killed them both. According to the records, Killer stabbed them about 80 times. He was hard to recognize. A year earlier, he had killed another inmate he got into a fight with. I tried to hold out as long as possible, but the other inmates kept interrogating me. In the first 2 months, I ended up in the infirmary twice with cuts. There were fights almost every day. I guess I paid my dues because after that, they didn't bother me as much. What's more, Killer even started talking to me. On visiting day, I decided to visit my guest. I thought it would be Amy or my father, but it was Debbie. "What are you doing here?" I asked. She looked so sweet and beautiful. I wanted to hug her, but I played the role of evil Ray. "Ray, I love you and I've made a lot of mistakes. I brought you some photos of the kids. They miss you very much, just like I do." Tears streamed down her face. "Listen, I have a different life now. Just take care of my kids and tell them I love them." She handed me several photos of the children. They were their last school photos and they looked so cute. "Ray, I didn't sign the divorce papers. I'll wait for you no matter how long it takes. I made a terrible, terrible mistake, but I know we can get through this if you still love me." I didn't know what to say. Of course, I felt that I still loved her. I just hated what she had done and that she didn't trust me. I got up and went back to my cell. I left her standing by the window and didn't look back. I was working in the kitchen when I overheard a conversation about a guy who was going to get revenge on Killer for killing his friend. They were planning to corner him in the dining hall the following evening. I couldn't tell anyone about it because I didn't want to be a snitch. I decided to tell Killer. It would make me part of his group. I didn't want to join any group, but I couldn't let this man die the next day. Killer wasn't sure whether to believe me. I told him to believe what he wanted to believe. I didn't say anything to the guards, but I was obviously taking a risk for him. The killer looked me in the eyes. He said you can tell a lot about a person from their eyes. He told me to stay away from him the next day. He would keep an eye on things to make sure no one found out what I had told him. I couldn't believe what he had done. He tucked 2 thin hardcover books under his shirt covering his kidneys. Behind him, at another table, sat 3 of his group. When one of the inmates approached from behind and leaned on Kyler's chest, he stabbed him in the kidneys, but of course, he hit the book. The knives were usually quite blunt. They pierced the skin but did not penetrate the book. Kyler's friends grabbed the inmate and began beating him until the guards arrived. The inmate was taken to solitary confinement, and Kyler sat back down at the table to finish his dinner. I can't believe he kept his cool during that ordeal. After that day, Killer talked to me fairly regularly. When we talked in the cell, he was a completely different person than he was outside. Outside the cell, he was as tough as ever. Everyone knew he was the leader of his group. He asked me about Debbie and the kids. He told me he had 3 grown children, but of course they never came to see him because he had killed their mother. He said his youngest daughter, Angie, was on his side. She knew her mother was the cause of the family problems. She wrote to him regularly, but he wouldn't let her visit. He didn't want the other inmates to see her and put her in danger. I could tell he really loved his daughter. He smiled when he told me she was a lawyer. I told him my whole sad story about how Sandy had set me and Debbie up. "Do you still love her?" Keeler asked. "Yes, I think so, but at the same time I hate what she did to our family." "Does she still love you?" "She says she does, but I can't forgive her." "Why? Look where you are now. You've hit rock bottom, man. If there was a woman in the world who loved me and said she'd wait for me, I'd be the happiest man alive." "What about your infidelity, your betrayal of me, and sleeping with another man? You killed a man and your wife over the same thing." "Aha. And I regret it every day of my life. I regret not giving her a second chance and not getting my family back. Don't get me wrong, Ray. Don't hold a grudge against her. She'll kill you slowly." He gave me food for thought. Is he right? What am I going to do when I get out? I have no job, no future, no family. The next month, I had another visitor. Debbie was back. She smiled at me, and there were tears in her eyes. "The kids drew some more pictures for you." She put them on the tray, and I looked at them. They were pictures of a dad, a mom, and 2 kids. Apparently, the kids still considered us a family. "They miss you, Ray. God, I miss you so much. Will you ever be able to forgive me so we can be a family again?" "I promise I'll do anything. I'm not talking to Sandy and Bob anymore after what she did to us. I'm sorry I didn't trust you." I thought, she didn't believe me once, so the next time someone says something, she'll probably believe them again instead of me. "Deb, I've been thinking a lot. I want to forgive you, but I don't know if I can. I can't get out of my head how you were with Bob. Did you really like him? No, I hated him. That's why I threw up. When you came in, I saw the look on your face and I felt sick. I knew I'd done the wrong thing when I saw you. Of course, I can't take back the past. God, I wish I could. I would never have done it if I hadn't been so drunk. I only want one man, and that's you, Ray, the father of our two children. A couple of weeks later, another visitor came to see me. It was Amy. Ray, remember I told you that Deb stopped seeing Sandy? I was driving past their house and saw Sandy and Bob going inside. I don't know why they were there, so I drove on. I just thought you should know. I was confused again. Had Deb lied to me again? I was ready to forgive her and try to make our life work. I knew Amy wouldn't lie to me. I had to find out why Deb was seeing Susan and Bob again. About a month later, Killer and I got to talking, and he said he felt indebted to me for what I had done for him. He said he had been a lawyer before he went to prison and that he had connections. He was going to see if he could get me out of the parole program. I didn't know whether to believe him, but he had never lied to me. It may seem strange to say this about a criminal, but I respected Killer. I often thought about what a good lawyer he must have been. His speech and bearing commanded respect. I knew it was best not to ask him any questions. I took him at his word. A few weeks later, I was called to the warden's office where a parole board was gathered. The warden spoke first. Mr. Harper, we have a petition for your parole. I don't know who knows you, but we were asked to talk to you. After reviewing your case, we saw that you had a difficult time adjusting during your first few months. Is that true? Yes, sir. I don't think I'm cut out for prison life, but I've been trying to adjust. If you were released early, where would you live and how would you survive? I had to think fast. I knew that everything depended on this question. Well, sir, I have a sister who is also my best friend. She and her husband said that when I get out, I can live with them until I get back on my feet. You're not married, are you, Mr. Harper? Yes, sir, but when I was convicted, we were in the process of getting divorced. Right now, I don't know how our relationship will turn out. I just want to be honest with you. We appreciate your honesty. We knew you were divorced and wanted to see how honest you were with us. Sir, as far as work is concerned, my previous employer said I was a good worker and that I could come back to him when I got out. What are your chances of going back to prison? We don't look good when a parolee goes back. I promise you, sir, I never want to see the inside of a prison again. Go back to your cell, Mr. Harper, and we'll be in touch before the end of the month. Yes, sir. And thank you for at least considering my request for parole. I returned to my cell and Keeler asked me how it had gone. I told him what I had said to the board and asked if he had anything to do with it. You never know, but if you get out early, I'll expect a carton of cigarettes a week on my tab. He laughed. A few days later, Debbie returned and said that someone from the parole board had been at the house. Are you getting out? She asked. What did they want? What did they say? I asked nervously. How we're going to live and if you can live there. I told them we broke up, but I'd like you to come back, she replied, sounding rather nervous. I changed the subject. You said you stopped seeing Sandy. Have you seen her? She's my sister. I don't see her very often. I interrupted her. And Bob, have you seen him lately? Why are you asking me these questions? She looked nervous. You can't be trusted. You said you wouldn't see Sandy, but she and Bob were at the house. Is there something else going on between you and Bob? Is that why you're worried about parole? Tell your damn lover, Bob, that when I get out, I'm going to finish the job, and if you're having fun with him then, I'll deal with you. Deb jumped up and ran out of the visiting room. I knew my guess was right. I was ready to go back to the same damn situation that got me here. I wasn't going to kill anyone. I just wanted to scare them. I called my sister Amy and she came over. I told her about my conversation with Deb and she said she was sorry. She said the parole board had come by and she told them I could stay with her as long as I needed to. Her husband Kenny was there, and he said I could stay with them. Do you know if anyone called Mr. Parker about my job? Yes, they did, and he said you could go back to your old job. You were one of his best employees. Oh my gosh, Amy, you've given me hope. I hope they don't turn me down. They won't. They told me that since you have a place to live and a job, you'll probably be released at the beginning of the month. She started crying. Amy was right. I got a call saying I would be released the following week. They gave me the name of the lawyer who would be handling my case. I was supposed to report to the agency immediately after my release. I didn't understand why I had to meet with a lawyer instead of a parole officer. I was told that the lawyer was handling my release. They were supposed to meet with me, fill out paperwork, explain the terms of my parole, and then refer me to a parole officer. I thanked Killer, and he reminded me about the cigarettes. I told him they were on me. To be honest, I don't know if he had anything to do with my parole, but for my freedom, I was willing to pay for a pack of cigarettes a week. When I walked out the gate, my sister Amy was standing there crying. I hugged her and kissed her like a brother. "Welcome back, brother." I walked into Amy's house and her husband greeted me. I could tell they were very happy to see me. Of course, I asked about Debbie, and Amy said that after talking to her in prison, she had contacted a lawyer and signed the divorce papers. It seemed my guess about Debbie had been right, but now I was a free man. I knew I had to go to Deb and arrange visits with the kids. First, I called to make sure she was home. I didn't want any surprises and end up back in jail. I tried to explain to her that I wasn't coming over to cause a scene. We could talk on the porch. I just wanted to arrange regular visits with the kids. She agreed to meet me, but said she would call the police if I started causing trouble. When I pulled up to the house, the kids ran out to meet me, shouting, "Dad, Dad, you're back." I grabbed them and hugged them. God, I missed them so much. I talked to them for a few minutes and told them to go ride their bikes while their mom and I sat on the porch and watched them. What do you want, Ray? You made it clear that we're never going to be a family again. We're moving on. Debbie, they're my children too, and I want them to be part of my life. I was willing to forgive you, but you lied to me again. You just wanted to go back to Bob and Sandy. I know what kind of people they are and who they hang out with. Ray, you were in prison and I was lonely. Don't lie to me. I know you slept together. I don't care who you have fun with. Stick that damn Bob up your ass if you haven't already. I'm here to tell you that if I find out my kids are being exposed to that perverted lifestyle, I'll do everything in my power to take them away from you. Do you understand? These aren't empty threats. My children are very important to me and I want them to have a good life. Ray, I would never do anything to hurt my children. You already have. You destroyed our family because of that damn Bob. I'm going to make sure my children stay away from people like that. Tomorrow, I'm going to meet with a new lawyer and find out what my rights are. I don't believe you anymore, and I don't trust you. You've shown me your true colors. I left you, but we have 2 children, and I will make sure they grow up in a good environment. I promise you, Ray, I won't get involved in that lifestyle. Yes, I tried, I admit it, but it's not for me or my children. You'll see, I've changed. I don't believe you, and remember, actions speak louder than words. The kids came home, and I talked to them about school and what they were doing. I told them I was staying with Aunt Amy, but that I would find an apartment closer by soon and spend more time with them. I kissed them, hugged them, and went back to Amy's. The next morning, I went to the law firm that represented me. It felt strange to go there. I didn't even talk to the lawyer who got me parole. I walked up to the secretary and took out the card I had been given by the parole board. "Can I speak to Mr. A.J. Brady? I have an appointment. I'm Ray Harper." The secretary smiled at me. "Miss Brady will see you in a minute. Please take a seat, Mr. Harper." I wondered if she had said Miss Brady. The name card said A.J. Brady, so I assumed it was a man. I sat there thinking when a beautiful woman in a dark blue suit approached me. She had a smile, dimples, and shoulder-length dark hair. I couldn't help but stare at her as she held out her hand to greet me. "Ray Harper, I presume," she said, extending her hand. "I'm A.J. Brady. I know we haven't met, but I've been asked to look into your, how should I put it, situation. And I've come to the conclusion that you didn't have a fair defense, but we'll talk about that later. Would you come to my office?" "Mary, don't bother me. Please take all calls and tell them I'll call back." "Yes, Miss Brady," replied the secretary. I followed her into the office. If she had asked me to, I would have followed her into the abyss. She was a very beautiful woman. "So, Mr. Harper, we finally meet. Please call me Ray if you don't mind. I saved your life and I don't understand why you did that." "Mr. Harper, I mean, Ray, my good friend asked me to look into your case. Your lawyer allowed you to plead guilty instead of helping you. You had many mitigating circumstances that he didn't mention. You had just signed divorce papers. The man who caused your divorce came to where you were. You weren't yourself at the time. These and other factors could have mitigated your sentence. Of course, you committed an assault, but the sentence was too harsh. I pointed this out to the parole board and they agreed with me to some extent. I asked, "Why, Ms. Brady? Why me? Who asked you to help me? Can I call you something other than Ms. Brady? After all, I feel like you saved my life and gave it back to me." "Listen, Ray, I was asked to help you and I did. Is it really that important for you to know who hired me? As for my name, I think you can call me AJ. I made friends with a man in prison. His name was Killer. He said he would help me get parole. He also told me he had a beloved daughter named Angie who was a lawyer. I thought you might be the beautiful daughter he was talking about. My new lawyer's eyes lit up. She looked me in the eyes and said, "Yes, Killer. I mean Dave. My father's name is Dave and he asked me to take your case. He's never asked me to do this before, so you must have made a really good impression on him." I was surprised when he asked me, but I'll do anything for my father. AJ, can I call you Angie? I know we just met and you're my lawyer, but you're too beautiful for me to call you AJ. And I definitely don't want to call you Miss Brady. What does AJ even mean? My name is Angelina Juanita Brady. Now you know why I chose AJ. Listen, Ray, we need to discuss a few things. Will you have lunch with me? I asked. Ray, I don't date clients. It's not a date, it's lunch. I have to work in a couple of hours and I need to eat. If you don't want to call it a date, you can pay and call it a business meeting. You take clients out to lunch sometimes, don't you? Angie smiled and dimples appeared on her face. No wonder my father liked you. Yes, I take clients out to lunch and eat with them. I'll tell Mary we're leaving and we can go have lunch. I watched her get up. She was a very pleasant woman. She had a look and personality that you don't often find in lawyers. We went to lunch and went to a very nice, quiet restaurant. After we ordered lunch, she told me about her meeting with my parole officer. She said he was a pretty decent guy, but that I would have to follow the rules and stay out of trouble. I had to meet with him twice a month for several months and then once a month until the end of the year. Angie, you know everything about me. Why don't you tell me something about yourself? Ray, I don't think it would be appropriate to talk to you about my personal life. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, and I love looking at your dimples when you smile. Ray, please, I told you I don't date clients, but thank you for the compliments. She couldn't help but blush. Tell me about your law degree. It's business. I have a right to know as a client. She tried to suppress a smile. Okay, Ray. I got my law degree at university on a scholarship. I've been working as a lawyer for several years. I specialize in criminal law. Lunch was served, and we ate. I couldn't help myself. Angie was all I could think about. Will I see you again, Angie? Actually, you'll have to come back next week to fill out some paperwork you'll be getting from your parole officer. Why don't we have lunch together? It's my treat. I noticed she had softened a little. Okay, but this lunch will be strictly business. She couldn't suppress a smile. After lunch, we returned to the office. When she held out her hand to say goodbye, I held it for a few seconds. I wondered what she was thinking. I hoped she didn't think I was some kind of weirdo. We said goodbye, and I told her I was looking forward to next week's lunch. Her secretary glanced at her and smiled. I guess clients don't see their lawyers very often. But then again, most lawyers aren't like Angie. I went back to work and everything went smoothly. I finished the task in no time. I guess it's like riding a bike. You just get on and go. Most of my former colleagues were still working there. They seemed to have a newfound respect for me. No one gave me any grief. I had meetings with Angie for the next 2 Mondays in a row. She tried to keep things professional, but I wanted to know more about her. In the 4th week of our relationship, she told me that our professional relationship was over. Are you still my lawyer? I asked. Of course, if you have any problems, just give me a call, she replied. Angie, I'm afraid I have to fire you. I'm very sorry. What? Fire me? What's gotten into you? I helped you get out of jail. I never accused you of anything, and you want to fire me. Yes, you said you wouldn't date your clients, and I want to go on a real date with you. I want to take you out to a nice dinner and maybe dancing. I want to get to know you. I know I'm an ex-con and a factory worker, but I want to get to know you better. I think you want that too, because over the last 3 weeks, I could have called and found out all the information you asked for. I think you want to see me too. Ray, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say. Yes, I like you a little, but the thing is, you're an ex-convict and a factory worker, right? You don't think we should be together? No, that's not it at all. You're my client, I'm your lawyer. What will people think? Who cares? Just go on one date with me. If you don't like it, you'll know not to go back. Listen to your heart. Go out with me on Saturday night. Listen, I know you just got out of prison and you've been behind bars for a long time. I don't know where this will lead, but I want to give it a chance. Oh God, I know I shouldn't do this, but I'll go once. I'll tell you right now. Don't try to get me into bed. Oh God, I can't believe I said that, Angie replied. On Saturday, we went for a drive. I borrowed my sister's car. I didn't want to take Angie in my old car. She gave me her address, which was a townhouse. I knocked on the door, and when she opened it, I saw the most beautiful woman in my life. I know that all men look at women differently. In my eyes, she was stunning and beautiful at the same time. I wanted to grab her and hug her right there and then. I knew I had to act like a gentleman, but it wasn't easy. We went to a fancy restaurant, ordered wine, and then dinner. After dinner, we decided to chat while listening to music. Angie, tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up? You must have been married because your last name is different from your father's. Tell me about yourself. You know my life like a book. Ray, my parents didn't get along. Of course, you know how it ended. My father spent 14 years in prison. My aunt and uncle raised me, my brother, and my sister. I'm the youngest, and when it all happened, I was 14. It was very hard for all of us. My brother and sister never forgave my father. They love him, but they just can't forgive him. I knew my mom was cheating on him, and I told my dad. I argued with my mom, but she said I was just a kid and didn't understand what I was talking about. She said that one day I would really understand life. So I told my dad. 2 weeks later, he caught her with another man. I partly blame myself. If I hadn't said anything, it wouldn't have happened. Angie, you don't know that. It's not your fault that your mom died and your dad went to prison. They were adults, and you were a child trying to do the right thing. After my dad went to prison, I decided to go to college and become a lawyer so that I could maybe help him get a lighter sentence. So I chose criminal law. Of course, there wasn't much room for maneuver in my father's case. He was a brilliant lawyer himself and said he was proud of me, but there was nothing I could do to help him. Were you married before, or is that none of my business? I asked Angie. Both. I was married for a short time, and it's none of your business. She smiled at me when she said that. Ray, let's talk about this another time. I don't want to ruin the evening. I'm enjoying being with you. Would you like to dance? I can't dance, but it would give me a chance to hold you. We got up, and I asked the band to play a few slow songs in a row. I put my arms around Angie, and we spun around in the dance. I held her close and breathed in the scent of her hair. Ray, you should know that I don't go on many dates. Because of the people I hang out with, I'm very distrustful of men. I just want to be honest with you. If my father hadn't sent you to me, I probably wouldn't be here tonight. I'll send your father another pack of cigarettes. Angie, you're the sweetest thing I've ever met. I'll do anything to earn your trust. If I cross the line, just say the word and I'll back off. When I drove her home that evening, I kissed her at the door. After that, she just stared at me. She leaned in and kissed me again. Can I come in, Angie? No, Ray, it's too soon. Too soon, not tonight. Will I see you again, say next Saturday? Maybe. Call me on Thursday. I went home a very happy man. We met the following Saturday and the ones after that. She told me more about herself. Ray, I want you to know more about me if we're going to keep seeing each other. I'm not going to hide anything from you. I'm not built that way. As I mentioned, I was married. It was during my first year of college. My boyfriend and I decided we loved each other. And of course, we became intimate. I became pregnant and we decided to get married. We went to a justice of the peace and he married us. Soon, we both realized that our marriage wasn't going to work. We were too young. I had a miscarriage, my husband and I talked, realized we had made a mistake, and got divorced. I kept the Brady name because my father said I should do that to distance myself from his Miller name. Of course, it was my maiden name. I was so glad she finally confided in me. She asked me about my children and I told her they wanted to meet her. I mentioned that I had told them about her and my daughter keeps asking to meet her. Angie, would you like to meet my sister and her 2 children? We're having a family barbecue and you're invited. It's next Saturday. I knew that if she agreed to come, it would be a huge step for us. Meeting my family was the first step toward us becoming closer. She looked anywhere but at me. I knew she understood that this was a big step. She took a deep breath and looked me in the eyes. Then she leaned in and kissed me. It was the first time she had ever kissed me like that. She pulled away and took another deep breath. Okay, Ray, count me in. What should I bring? I had no idea what women did at parties like this. I told her I'd ask Amy to call her. When I told Amy that Angie was coming to the family party, the guest list grew. Everyone wanted to meet the new woman in my life. My mom and dad arrived. along with several cousins, aunts, and uncles. Angie said she would make potato salad. I remember Amy telling me how nice Angie's voice sounded when she called her. I think she was hoping something would happen between us. I knew it would. Every weekend, I would stop by Deb's to pick up the kids. I would leave them with Amy, or we would go out somewhere. They were fun to be around. I asked them about their mother, but I always tried to be polite. Kyle told me that their mom was seeing a man. At first, I was concerned, but then Kyle told me he was a school teacher. His name was Pat. He taught health and was the soccer coach. I asked Deb about him, and she said, I told you I'm trying to change my life. Pat's a good man. His wife died of leukemia 2 years ago. He moved here to start over. He has a 15-year-old daughter, and Kyle and Kayla love her. I want to tell you one thing, Deb. Your lies and betrayal destroyed our relationship. If you care about this man, treat him well, and most importantly, be honest with him. You don't need to destroy a relationship the way you destroyed ours. Pat loves our children and is good to them. He knows about you and understands that you are their father. I hope things work out between us. I hope I haven't ruined your relationship with all women. You're a good man, Ray, and I know you'll find the right woman. I'm just sorry I caused you so much pain. I said goodbye and drove home. I found a small apartment about a mile from Deb and the kids' house. I found a 2-bedroom apartment so the kids would have a place to stay when they were with me. I still stop by Amy's a couple of times a week, usually for dinner, but I enjoy visiting them. When the day of the barbecue arrived, I was thrilled. I stood outside waiting for Angie to show up. I breathed a huge sigh of relief when her car pulled up. She smiled at me and handed me a bowl. Potato salad, and you better eat it, she smiled at me. She was beautiful. It seemed to me that she couldn't look bad in my eyes. I felt so good when I was around her. I knew I was in love with her, even though we had never done anything more than kiss. Some things you just know. I just hoped she felt the same way about me. I introduced her to everyone as my girlfriend. When I introduced her to my mom and dad, she smiled and hugged each of them. My dad said right in front of her, "Don't lose her, Ray. We already love her, even though we don't know her." Angie looked at me and smiled. I took that as a positive sign. When I introduced her to Amy, they both looked at me. Ray, I never told you this, but I met your sister when I was interviewing you for your parole. I didn't tell you because there hadn't been a chance until now. I never thought we'd become friends. I told you I'd never lie to you. That's why I'm telling you now. Amy and I hadn't spoken since you got out until she called me about the potato salad. Is there anyone else you've talked to that I should know about? Yes, Deb, your ex-wife Sue, and of course Bob. I talked to your boss at work to make sure you keep your job. I talked to the people who witnessed the fight at the bar and of course the police officers who arrested you. I did all of this as your lawyer. I never thought I would fall in love with you. After all, we had never met. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about all of this, but I really shouldn't have. You were my client, and I had to know the truth before I could take your side. If you want me to leave, just say so and I'll go. Leave. Leave. You just said you love me, and that's all I heard. I hugged her, kissed her, and then introduced her to the rest of my family. I told Angie I'd be back in a few minutes. I had to pick up the kids. They really wanted to meet her. When I returned, Kayla came over and introduced herself to Angie. Hi, I'm Kayla. Are you Dad's girlfriend? You're very pretty, just like Dad said. Hi, Kayla. You can call me Angie or AJ. You're a very pretty girl. It's very nice to meet you. Kayla said, I want to introduce you to my older brother. He's 10 years old and he's afraid of girls. Kyle, this is AJ, Dad's girlfriend. I watched Kyle shake Angie's hand. She crouched down to talk to the children at their level. From the way they talked, I could tell they would be friends. I walked over and joined them. We like her, Dad. She's so pretty and nice, Kyle, who wasn't known for being talkative, said to me. Angie just looked at me again and smiled. The barbecue was great. Toward the end of the evening, I was talking to Angie when Kyle and Kayla came over. Dad, remember you said we're going to the amusement park in 2 weeks? Can Angie come with us? Then you'll have someone to talk to while Kayla and I are on the rides. I tried to explain to Kyle that he should ask questions like that in private. Maybe Angie had other plans, or maybe she didn't like amusement parks. He looked at Angie and apologized to her. I'm sorry, Angie. I didn't know you didn't like amusement parks. Angie laughed. She knelt down and said to Kyle, Honey, your dad means that you should ask him questions like that in private, not me. As for amusement parks, I love them and would be happy to go if your dad doesn't mind. How about you and I go on the roller coaster? Of course, we all went to the amusement park, and the kids rode every ride they could. Angie kept her promise to Kyle and rode the roller coaster with him. She also rode the Ferris wheel with Kyle. On the way home, Kyle said, "Dad, you need to buy a car instead of a truck. You can't expect Angie to use her car all the time because we can't all fit in your truck." Angie and I laughed, but she was right. I didn't see Angie for the next 2 weeks. I had to work a couple of weekends, and she was busy in court. We talked on the phone a couple of times, but it wasn't the same. One Saturday, I picked up the kids and we decided to go to Chuck E. Cheese's. It was a pizza place for kids. Besides pizza, there were all kinds of games where you could win tokens and get small prizes. We were already driving home when Kayla asked me if she could call Angie and ask her to come with us. I didn't want to disappoint her, so I said I'd call Angie. I called, "Angie, it's Ray. Kayla asked me to call you. What are you doing tonight?" "Oh, hi, Ray. I was going to go out with some friends. What's up?" "Nothing. Have a good time." "Ray, you said Kayla wanted to tell me something. Put her on the phone." "It's okay, Angie." "Yes, it's important. Please put Kayla on the phone." I could only hear one side of the conversation. "Hi, Angie. Dad's taking Kayla and me to Chuck E. Cheese's for pizza and games. We thought you might want to come along." "Yeah, okay, I'll tell him. We miss you too." "Okay, bye." I felt sorry for Kyle. "I'm sorry, honey, but she already has plans." "What do you mean, Dad?" "She said she'd be here in half an hour. She asked me to tell you she's buying a car so she doesn't have to use hers all the time." "Yes, Dad," she said. "She misses us." In the evening, after we returned from the pizza party, where the kids won half a dozen stuffed animals thanks to Angie and her skill at playing games, I took the kids back to their mom. Angie told me it was a time we got to know each other better. We went into my apartment and sat down on the couch. "Angie, you know I love you, right? I wouldn't be here if I felt anything else. I want you to make love to me. I haven't trusted anyone in a long time. All I ask is that you be gentle and caring. I don't want to be used. I want to be loved." We started on the couch and then moved to the bedroom. We did everything we wanted. I massaged her legs, licked whipped cream off her stomach, and everything else. We spent half the night caressing, massaging each other and making love. I felt best when I could hold her after making love. It felt so good to hold her in my arms and hug her. I hadn't done that in so long. In the end, she stayed the whole night. I got up before her and made us French toast. She came out of the bedroom wearing one of my t-shirts. "That t-shirt has never looked so good," I told her. I couldn't believe how beautiful she looked, even in the morning. She took a quick shower and we sat down to talk. "Angie, what's going to happen with us? You know I love you and my kids love you and my whole family loves you. What do you want, Ray?" I'm talking like a lawyer. "We've only known each other for a few months, and last night was the first time we made love. I know it's only been a few months, but I want you in my life every day. If we don't make love enough, we can go back to the bedroom and spend the whole day there." Angie smiled at this remark. "Angie, I want you to be my wife. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in Angie's eyes. "Ray, you have to know that I don't take love lightly. I made a mistake once, as I've already told you. Yes, I will marry you. I want you to know that I will always be there for you and the children. I know what you went through in your first marriage. I will always be honest with you and never cheat on you. I expect the same from you." She came up to me and kissed me passionately. "Honey, what's wrong? You look happy and sad at the same time," I asked her. "I'm thinking about Dad and how happy he'll be. Most young girls think about that special day when they get married, about how they'll wear a white dress and how their dad will walk them down the aisle and give them away to their husband. I know that will never happen to me, and it makes me sad." She cried softly. "Last time, my dad didn't even know I was getting married. By the time I wrote to him, I had already lost the baby and was on my way to getting divorced. I'm sorry, Ray. I shouldn't be thinking about that right now. After all, I'm marrying a man my father approves of and whom I've loved since the first time I saw him." "What? You've been in love with me since the beginning? I fell in love with you at first sight, but I know you already know that." She smiled sweetly at me and asked when I wanted to get married. I replied that it would be whatever she wanted. We both agreed that it should be as soon as possible. I asked if I could start telling everyone, and she said she was going to do the same, so we just needed to set a date. We decided it would be in 2 months. For the next few days, I was on cloud 9. I told Amy and her husband Kenny. They were both very happy for us. I had to tell the kids. I called them at home and put them both on the phone so I could tell them at the same time. They both screamed about how happy they were and how much they liked Angie. I told them it would take a couple of months, but I wanted them to be among the first people I told. I went into Angie's office and Mary, her secretary, congratulated me. She said Angie had already told everyone and invited them all to the wedding reception. She called Angie and told me to come in. Angie was waiting for me. When I walked in, Angie was quietly crying. "What's wrong, Angie?" I called the prison, spoke to the warden, and asked if my father could get a day's leave to attend our wedding. He told me that my father is not allowed to leave the prison under any circumstances. His life sentence means exactly that. He said it was out of his power and there was nothing he could do. I'm so sorry, Angie. I know how important it is for you to have your father there. It gets worse, Ray. My father's cancer, which was in remission, has returned. He has 3 to 6 months to live. She began to cry, and I held her close to my chest. I thought, why, God, why did you do this to her? She was a good person, and I felt so sorry for her. Angie, I've been buying cigarettes for your father since I got out of prison. It was our agreement. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. Dad doesn't smoke anymore. He uses the cigarettes he gets sent to trade with other inmates. You're not responsible for his cancer. I had an idea, but I didn't want to tell Angie and take away her hope. I kissed her goodbye and told her I'd see her tomorrow. The next day, I called in sick and went to the prison to meet with Keeler and the warden. When Keeler saw me, he smiled. You're taking good care of my girl, Ray. All I ask is that you make her happy. She deserves much more in life than she's had. I explained my idea to Keeler, and at first he refused, but in the end he agreed if I could convince the warden. Then I told him I'd see him later as I had a meeting with the warden. The warden greeted me. Well, Ray, I see you're keeping your cool and getting married. I'm very sorry, Keeler, but he's a lifer, and we can't release him for his daughter's wedding. Warden, you have complete control over the prison and can make most decisions regarding its infrastructure. Where are you going with this, Ray? Can we get married on the hotel grounds? We can use the chapel, and Keeler can walk his daughter down the aisle? You and Keeler's daughter want to get married here? In prison? Just so her father can be there? Is that what you're asking? Yes, sir. She hasn't seen her father in over 14 years, and he's dying, as you know. All we're asking is to use the chapel for the wedding. I know there have been prisoner weddings here before. All right, Ray. I'll take care of everything on our end. No need for a big celebration. Besides you and your bride, you can only invite 3 outsiders into the prison. I'll allow Keeler to invite a few of his cellmates. You'll have to use the services of a prison attendant. I thanked the warden and returned to Keeler. Dave, Keeler laughed when I called his name. The warden agreed to my idea. I'll go tell Angie. Thanks, Dave. I know this is very important to our girl. Dave smiled at me. Ray, write down the number I'm going to give you. I wrote it down for Angie. When you go to the bank, tell Angie to take her birth certificate with her. The account is in her maiden name. I wrote down the information and told Dave I was sorry he was sick. Just take care of my little girl. That's all I ask, Dave replied. I returned to Angie's office. She saw the smile on my face and asked what had happened. Would you mind getting married in prison? I asked. What are you talking about, Ray? I told her about my conversation with the warden and that her father would be able to walk her down the aisle. She cried with happiness. God, I love you, Ray. I told her about the safe and we went to see what was in it. I'm Angelina Juanita Miller. I'd like to see my safe deposit box. Angie gave him her number, and he looked at her birth certificate. He led us to the safe deposit box, opened it, and left the room. The first thing we noticed was a note from her father. Dear Angie, if you are opening this box, it means you are getting married or I am dead. I hope it's the former. In the small box is your mother's engagement ring. I know everyone has been wondering where it went, but I put it here for safekeeping. I want you to have it and wear it with pride. Your mother had her faults, but she loved you, and I know she would want you to have her engagement ring. There are also bonds totaling over $15,000 to help pay for your wedding. I arranged them before I was taken away. When you see your brother and sister, tell them there is a box for each of them too, if they haven't received theirs yet. Only yours has the ring in it. Congratulations, and always be honest with your husband. With love, Dad. Angie and I discussed our wedding. We decided to invite her brother Brad and sister Lisa if they would come, and my sister Amy, too. We would invite our relatives and friends to a reception shortly after the wedding. Angie and Amy spent the next month getting everything ready for the reception. We had to pay extra for everything because the wedding was so soon, but I wanted Angie to have everything she dreamed of. Amy said she would take her digital camera and take pictures. Angie and I went to see her brother and sister. She introduced me to them. They said they didn't hate their father. They hated what he had done. Angie explained to them what a wedding was and why she was having it in prison. Brad and Lisa had tears in their eyes when they found out their father was dying. After they agreed to go to the wedding, Angie gave them her bank account numbers. They were surprised that their father had put money aside for them. On the day of the wedding, Angie and I drove to the prison. Amy and her husband came too, but her husband waited for her in the car. When we entered the prison, I had a suit for Killer. One of the guards took it to him. I was wearing a tuxedo that I had rented for the occasion. Amy went to Angie's room to help her with her dress. Angie didn't want me to see her until she entered the chapel. I went into the chapel to wait for Angie. Brad and Lisa came in. Brad was my best man, and Lisa was Angie's maid of honor. There was a small piano in the chapel, and one of the inmates played a few songs on it. The guard brought in 5 more inmates, Killer's Dave's friends, and sat them down. The warden entered with the minister and smiled. He came up to me and said there would be cake and punch for everyone after the ceremony. He wasn't such a bad guy for a warden. The pianist started playing Here Comes the Bride, and everyone stood up. Angie entered the door accompanied by her father. Tears were streaming down both their cheeks. Angie's dream had come true. On her wedding day, her father was walking her down the aisle. When they reached the chapel, everyone took their places except for our small wedding procession. Another security guard entered and closed the door. The priest said, "Who gives this woman to this man?" "Yes, sir," Dave replied proudly and sat down. "Angelina Juanita Miller Brady, do you take Raymond Michael Harper to be your husband?" The priest continued his speech and then asked me the same question. We made sure he answered, "To love and honor from this day forward." That's how we both felt. No one could come between us. We had both had difficult lives up to that point. We knew we would do everything to make our marriage strong. After the vows, I kissed my bride. Then she turned and kissed and hugged her father. We all went into the next room to talk and eat cake and punch that the warden had brought. Brad and Lisa went over to their father and hugged him. They were talking to him for the first time in almost 15 years. Many people were crying. Tears of joy and tears of remorse. They knew their father was dying, and they wanted him to know that they still loved him. Amy took pictures of Angie and me throughout the ceremony. She also took as many pictures as she could of Dave with his 3 children. She captured the tears, the hugs, and even the laughter they all shared during that short time. She left and then, together with her husband, took the photos to a 24-hour Photoshop where they were developed and enlarged. We said goodbye to Dave and the prison warden. We thanked him for making Angie's dream come true. As we were leaving, we noticed that Brad and Lisa were still talking to their father. It was a beautiful sight. We returned to town and went to the reception. Everyone we had invited was there. The first people we saw were Kyle and Kayla, who jumped for joy when we got out of the car. They ran up to us and hugged us. We entered the hall and were greeted with cheers. My parents stood with tears in their eyes, as did almost everyone who greeted us. Many of Angie's friends came to greet us. I didn't know most of them. I noticed Mary when she came over and hugged us. About half an hour later, Amy arrived with the photos. She had enlarged some of our photos. She laid them out on the table so everyone could see them. Brad and Lisa arrived with their families. Brad was with his wife and 2 children. Lisa was with her husband and 3 children. Both families went over to Dave's photo and told the children that he was their grandfather. Amy told them that she had made 4 sets of photos and that after the reception, each family could take 1 set home. 1 for Brad and Lisa, 1 for Angie and me, and of course, 1 for Amy. I want to tell you how incredible Angie looked in her wedding dress. If she had wings, she would have looked like an angel sent from God. To me, she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, and she was my wife. I think most men feel that way about their wives. We danced and ate and danced some more. We spent most of the night in each other's arms, toasting the night away. My coworkers told me I was a very lucky man. Believe me, I didn't need to be told that. I knew I had a ring, and I intended to keep it forever. If you're wondering, Deb and Pat didn't come to our wedding. It was Angie's day, and I didn't want anything to spoil it. I wanted to see her and her father walk down the aisle, and her brother and sister reconcile with their father. The family was whole again. I will never forget that day. Epilogue. It's been 6 months since our wedding. Debbie and Pat got married last month. I was glad to see that she was really trying to get her life together. My kids say that Pat is good to them. I asked about Aunt Sue and Uncle Bob, and my kids said they moved to another state. I was transferred to the day shift so I could see my children more often and be home with Angie every evening. She was pregnant with our child. 3 months after our wedding, Dave, Keeler, died. The kids visited him every month until he passed away. It was sad, but we got to tell him about Angie's pregnancy. We told him it was going to be a boy and we were going to name him David Raymond. It brought a smile to Dave's face. I look back and remember everything that happened. My wife's betrayal, prison, meeting and marrying the woman of my dreams. Now I was starting my life over and soon I would be a father again. Not a day goes by that I don't thank God for what I have. I thank Him for giving Angie and me another chance at happiness. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for the next video.